Hi, I'm BC Jones. I'm the writer, director, and one of several producers on the film Dada. What was the inspiration for Dada? Well, the time I wrote Dada, I was in film school, and part of the curriculum was taking a lot of art history classes. So naturally, that kind of started to influence my work. And once I got into like learning about Marcel Duchamp and the Cabaret Voltaire and all that kind of stuff, then I started to I really got an appreciation for it. And it certainly, that was probably the big inspiration for the film. The strange thing about the movie is it's as much inspired by that as like watching Monty Python or Looney Tunes cartoons when I was a kid. It's certainly that sort of humor is what's prevalent in the film. A lot of people are like, oh, it's very Wes Anderson. Please understand, I actually conceived of this movie long before Wes Anderson was Wes Anderson. He hadn't even made Rushmore at the time that I came up with the film and wrote the original draft of it. So getting funding to shoot Dada was a pretty interesting story. I was part of a group here in LA called Filmmakers Alliance, and every year they give out a grant for an emerging filmmaker to make a film that will then screen at the following year's Vision Fest. And part of that grant, you got like a camera package from Panavision, you got film stock from Kodak and Fuji. There was like free post works via Michael Cioni's company at the time called Plaster City. And it was amazing. But then you got a little bit of money too. But I had to come up with a lot more money because the film was quite ambitious. It was like a costume period piece and stuff. It had several extras. There was, some location things to overcome. And so basically I maxed out some credit cards. I don't even think I had like a full-time job at the time. I think I was like working on TV shows here and there. But yeah, that's kind of how it happened. I begged, borrowed, and stealed just so I could make this film because I had this awesome opportunity to do it. So yeah, that's kind of how I funded it via debt. Casting was kind of twofold on this. I actually originally cast the two leads with two friends of mine who were also accomplished actors in their own right. And we actually had several rehearsals, and throughout that rehearsal process, what we both all kind of figured out and agreed on was that I had miscast the film, that they weren't quite right for the parts. And we all kind of mutually agreed that was the case, and for the best for everybody was that I would recast it. So that's what I did. So at that point, I went out and had auditions. And Michael Coleman, I knew actually beforehand. I still auditioned him for the part. He was like a no-brainer. Like the minute he came in and read for the role, I was like, Coleman's perfect for this. Brandon Herman, I was totally unsure of during the actual auditions. It was later when my producer Nick and I were reviewing the audition tapes. We were like, this guy's great. There's something about his comic timing that is absolutely perfect for this character. Beyond that, there was Jonathan Shockley played the Heavy, plays Oswald Bosch in the film. And I'd worked with him several times. I'd worked with he's part of a comedy group called Red State Update. And Travis Harmon is the other half of that. He plays the auctioneer. So those guys were cast very early on. I didn't even have to audition them. I knew they would be perfect. They had just great comedic skills, and I'd worked with them several times. So yeah, and beyond that, it was just kind of, friends and other FA members and stuff were, part of the rest of the cast as like the extras and whatnot. So a funny moment while shooting Dada. So even though I'd actually had like kind of wardrobe tests and stuff, I'd never actually seen the main actors in their wardrobe with like the makeup and the and the mustaches and all, and the hat and all that stuff. So when Michael Coleman came out in full wardrobe on day one, he's like, I look like Daniel Plainview from the movie There Will Be Blood. And I was like, yeah, you really do look like Daniel Plainview. And so throughout the rest of the filming, every time we'd be in between takes or whatever, he would turn to the camera and do a Daniel Plainview impression, something like, I'm Daniel Plainview, and you can save a lot by switching to Geico. Things like that. I wish I'd been rolling to get some of these bloopers and whatnot, but, we were shooting on film. Well, Dada, the whole thing was challenging. I think it was challenging from beginning to end. The production was very challenging. Post was actually very smooth on it because we had this amazing post supervisor part of the grant and stuff. So, and I also had Greg Hobson edit the film, and just he's a high-end pro editor. And it was just, that was great. Like, post was smooth, production was like crazy. Because there were just so many variables we were working with. We were shooting inside of a house that one of the producers, Bobby Lee, he lived in at the time. He lived there with two other producers as well. And he was actually in like the Ukraine shooting a documentary, Bobby Lee was, when we were filming this. So we were at the house, and none of the owners were there at the time we were shooting this. Well, the two of the owners returned on the last day of shooting, and the shooting had slowly but surely gone into a night shoot. And so we could shoot all the stuff with the lightning effect and stuff at the end when they're confronting Oswald in his bedroom. And and they were very upset that we were still there, and they were upset that we had this, lightning effect. They didn't know about that, and they became pretty angry, and I think like the first AD quit. I mean, it was just like everything that could go wrong started to go wrong at the end of this shoot. Somehow we kept going. I think originally I had like planned on shooting it differently, and I was just like, you know what, let's just go handheld, let's just shoot it. It's kind of a nutty scene anyway, like we should just make it really kind of kinetic and, have that kind of energy. So that's how we shot it, and that's how it went. I think it ultimately worked. I mean, it wasn't quite what I originally had planned for, but sometimes you just have to make compromises when you're in the heat of the moment. I would say probably the best advice I would bestow upon other filmmakers is, stick to your vision. Everyone's going to have a lot of different opinions about it, but only you actually know your film. Only you really know the way you want to tell your story. Sometimes people do have good ideas, and you should be receptive to those, but really, you are the authority on this. You are the authority on your film. So, there's all kinds of ideas. People are going to have all kinds of ideas about it and how they want to shoot it or whatever. You shoot it the way you want to shoot it. That is my key advice to any burgeoning filmmakers out there, is just to stick to your guns, man. And go in as prepared as humanly possible. Because half of what your job is just answering a bazillion questions constantly. So you need to be as prepared as humanly possible to do this. My next project is I'm trying to get a couple of different feature films off the ground. I'm trying to first get a very, very low budget, micro budget feature off the ground, like somewhere in like the $25,000 to $50,000 range. That film is called Strega. It's kind of a poor man's Wicker Man, if you will. And mostly going to be shot, 90% of it's going to be shot out in the woods. And the other film I'd really love to make is a project I've tried to get off the ground for many years now. It's a film called Precious Little Things. It's kind of a dark, suburban gothic horror film that's pretty intense, and it's kind of scared a lot of investors away. But I want to make it anyway. I think it's a really one-of-a-kind, unique film that I've never seen anything quite like it before. You can purchase Blu-rays or DVDs through my website at www.cinester.com, Cinester, and you could just send me a quick email and say, hey, I'd like to buy a DVD or Blu-ray off you, and I'll get back to you. I've also got a Patreon link, which I'll send over as well, and you can feel free to throw me a few bucks if you feel like. That would be great. Whatever you can spare is always great. So, well, thanks so much, everybody, for taking the time to watch my film. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys had as much fun with it as we did making it. It's a real labor of love. I hope everybody enjoys all the different talents that were involved to get this thing off the ground.